работает ли у вас перевод. Let's just at first quickly check whether you're getting the interpretation. Please choose the little globe button, and as you press it, you can switch between English and Russian channels. Пожалуйста, выберите маленькую иконочку с глобусом, и вы увидите, что если вы нажмете на нее, что вы можете выбрать между русским и английским каналами. Соответственно, okay, I assume that the interpreting is working now. Ага, работает. Хорошо, хорошо. Пожалуйста, если что-то будет не работать вдруг в течение нашей секции, вы можете писать в чат. Спасибо, что вы пишете в чат прямо сейчас. So as during the panel, if there's any problems and you cannot hear the interpreting or you're having any technical problems, you can write on the chat and we will be trying to attend. So my name is Maria Gurjeva, and I'm happy to welcome you at After Post Photography Panel 1, Conference for Visual Studies, History and Theory of Photography, that runs this year for the 4th time. And I will just briefly start with thanking my dear colleagues, Friedrich Titjen, with whom we invented this conference in 2015, and Daria Panayoti and Olga Davidova, who is here, and Daria Panayoti is here with us on Zoom for standing by despite all the difficulties and for holding on with this conference. And I am immensely grateful to the European University for being the home for this conference for, I think, 7 years now, and also to the community of researchers of photography who have been the inspiration and support for us in organizing it. We just listened to a very inspiring panel of emerging researchers, and now we're just before we move to panel 1, and I give the floor over to Friedrich to chair it. Just one little last checkup that we have our stream on. Гинтрас, скажите, пожалуйста, мы можем начать?
Да, начать можно, да.
Все, тогда начинаем трансляцию. Коллеги, мы в Ютубе. Все, сейчас включу. Ольга, как услышать перевод? Вам нужно, если вы нажмете на иконочку с глобусом, на кнопочку с глобусом, то вы увидите 2 канала, вам нужно выбрать русский канал. So, Friedrich, the floor is yours.
I'm so excited, as I'm always when this conference starts, because it's something we have been doing for quite many years now and for quite many instances. And I think the year of 2020 was the only year we didn't do this conference. Only thing I regret that I can't be in St. Petersburg, which to all non-St. Petersburgians, I must say in this time of the year is arguably the most beautiful city in the world. But without delving too much into tourism or praise of the city, let's go into the conference. We are starting with the first panel, which is on, which we tentatively named Digital and AI. And the first speaker, our first speaker is Timothi Дракри, from who is Director Emeritus of the of the Graduate Photographic and Electronic Media Program at the Maryland Institute College of Art. He also works as a curator, writer, and editor, lectures internationally about the social impact of photography, electronic media, the transformation of representation and communication. He co-curated the exhibition Iterations, the New Image image and edited the book published by MIT Press that went with the exhibition. He edited also electronic culture, technology and visual representation together with Gretchen Bender, Culture on the Brink, Ideologies of Technology, and was a series editor for Electronic Culture, History, Theory, Practice, which was published by MIT Books. He's also been a guest professor at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna in 2004. Strangely, we missed each other there. And Richard Koopman, Distinguished Chair for the Visual Arts at the University of Hartford in 2005. And personally, I must say that Timothy's writings kind of accompanied me since the mid-90s when I was having my first intercourse, so to say, with net art, where he was a prominent writer and somebody of whom I learned a bit. Timothy, the floor is yours. So is there, now we can hear you? Yeah, yep. And now we can see you.
You can see me. Wait, just give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, well, good morning. It's great to be here. Like you, Friedrich, it's sad that we can't be in St. Petersburg, although Brooklyn today is glorious. So, and thanks to everybody for the organization. And I wanted to show just a quick slide to start, maybe. Can we see the screen? Yes?
No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, weird.
No.
Well, you see the whole screen. Okay. I just wanted to start with this letter that has been written in the past week sponsored by the Center for AI Risk. And this is the sentence in which now several hundred of the leading luminaries of AI and mathematics and physics have been asked to sign this letter that says mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other society scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. This is quite an amazing letter. Now it has, I think, somewhere around 400 signatures of the high end of the field. And so it represents a kind of concern that I think is present for us and certainly present for us in this conference. So I start with a quote from Adorno. The objective tendency of the Enlightenment to wipe out the power of images over man is not matched by any subjective progress on the part of enlightened thinking towards freedom from images. A recent US congressional hearing brought 3 key figures to testify about AI's astonishingly rapid deployment into the public sphere and how it might be regulated. The Senate committee members stumbled through tortured scenarios for a technology they knew very little about. Many posited the metaphor of Pandora's box to highlight the future shock of how powerful and rapacious AI is becoming and how corporations might willingly agree to regulatory restraints on the myriad effects that are already sweeping through almost every discipline. Pandora's box is not the metaphor that I might use. Instead, I would suggest one more predatory, a Faustian bargain. As Faust spoke in his opening monologue in Goethe's version, medicine and law and philosophy, you've worked your way through every school, even God help you theology, and sweated at it like a fool. Why labor at it anymore? You're no wiser now than you were before. For much of the last century, warnings and prognostications have come so many times concerning the effects of technology. In such a short talk, it'd be impossible to represent the gamut of cautions and dire consequences, along with the predictable utopian scenarios that haunt every new technology. I'm often reminded of a remark by Livy as the Roman Empire was collapsing. He wrote, "We have reached those days when we can endure neither our vices nor their remedies." And of Paul Virilio's realization that every technology inevitably brings its own form of accident. Even a quick look at these predictions would remind us of something that Alvin Toffler said in the book Future Shock in 1970, that the new technologies constituted the premature arrival of the future. As an expanded discourse, I propose a move away from photography per se, with the idea of the photographic, a photographic that distinguishes itself as an epistemological symbolic form, something far wider, with a wider circumference than its predecessor. And in this sense, I don't really concur with notions of post-photography or imagining what comes after post-photography, but rather that the widening sphere of the photographic resonates as an episteme, one that has been assimilated into the algorithms of AI. Remember as well that the digitization of photography, video, sound, cinema came just as virtual realities made their first inroads as a potential sphere. This propelled image technology, along with the surge of CGI, described by George Lucas long ago as immaculate reality, into computational realms largely unimagined outside the plateau of photographic or optical imagery. For us in the world of media representation, the reverberations of computation are not new. In rudimentary forms, we've been encountering them for decades. The stakes are not surprising. As soon as electronic and soon digital technologies hit the street, and often before, artists have been wrangling with their ramifications. In the photography video sphere, like it was for expanded cinema and sound, exhibitions proliferated. Digital photography, captured images, volatile memory, new montage, San Francisco, 1988. Passage de l'image in Paris, 1990. Photo, video, photography in the age of computer, London, 1991. Iterations, the new image, New York, 1994. Photography after photography, 1996. Are among many examples that aim to conceptualize and critique the arrival of digital cameras, sophisticated computers, and software. And now, as AI has come to infiltrate every aspect of image making, the past seems more like a soft prologue that was clearly ahead. Yet, even media theory was peeking into the future. Here, Willem Flusser in 1990. The ideology of the self has long to perish. It should have vanished with psychoanalysis, with neurophysiology, and with other results which show that there is no hard core within us. But this ideology remained until artificial intelligences were invented. It can no longer prevail unless it admits that machines have selves. Our praxis with electronic memories forces upon us the abandonment of the self. 1990. In an algorithmic sphere of human alienation, presence is no longer necessary. Neither the presence of a subject nor the presence of the other, then a virtualized algorithmic gaze mobilized by search criteria, delimited by semiotic hints. The past 4 decades has been driven less by the gradual forfeiture of so-called photographic reality. Indeed, in 1936, Norbert Wiener wrote in a text called The Role of the Observer, that to place a sense datum in our introspection is to orient it precisely as possible in the timescale of our experience, with so much cost to its logical definition that it becomes a mere that instead of a what. Soon, Alan Turing wrote, if a machine is expected to be infallible, it cannot also be intelligent. That, instead of a what, might suggest an explanation of why AI creates or iterates hallucinations. Are these hallucinations an algorithmic imaginary or signifiers of a glitch in the simulacra, or unconscious malevolence in learning systems or their programmers, like the ones that emerged in films like Godard's Alphaville, Fassbender's Weltraumdraht, Kubrick's HAL? Recently, Naomi Klein wrote an essay in The Guardian just last month. AI machines aren't hallucinating, but their makers are. She writes, why call the errors hallucinations at all? Why not algorithmic junk or glitches? Well, hallucination refers to the mysterious capacity of the human brain to perceive phenomena that are not present, at least not in the conventional materialist terms. By appropriating a word commonly used in psychology, psychedelics, and various forms of mysticism, AI's boosters, while acknowledging the fallibility of their machines, are simultaneously feeding the sector's most cherished mythology, that by building these large language models and training them on everything that we humans have written, said, and represented visually, they are in the process of birthing an animate intelligence on the cusp of sparking an evolutionary leap for our species, unquote. Yet alongside the obvious flaws, or they say biases, in the learning models whose potential effects are mind-numbing, came the opportunists of AI and the arts generally. Maybe the most pointed recent example for photography is Boris Elgotson's entry, Photomnesia, the electrician that won the Sony World Photography Award this year, an AI-created image that fooled the jury and was exposed, quote, by its creator. In rejecting the award, he said, AI is not photography, therefore I will not accept the award. How an unnamed jury could fall into such an obvious fraud is one of the most striking failures in this. Just in the past weeks, an AI art manifesto appeared in the journal EE, an experimental emerging art journal from Norway. It makes sadly superficial remixes of Marinetti's manifesto of futurism. Who they are is not clear. Even the link to their website, futureaesthetics.eu, was not functioning. Who they are, is not functioning. It opens with this manifesto. We believe the age of human-made art is coming to an end. One of the 10 items, number 7, says, we demand the abolition of the distinction of the artist and the machine. For the age of AI, they are one and the same. Maybe this is just another hallucinatory error of a text that reads like a feeble ChatGPT remix, or maybe a real hint of futurism with all of its aesthetics of violence. In 1990, a VR researcher proposed, psychology is the physics of virtual reality. I'd suggest algorithms are the psyche of AI. An AI I won't call artificial, but merely algorithmic. And even I have doubts about the use of the word intelligence, rather than say computational cunning disguised as sentience. AI is devoid of improvisation, of an imaginary, a free association, of unscripted ingenuity, intuition, desire, passion. It's just predictive, yielding only what's already in its databases, or dare I invoke what Norman Klein defined as special effects, scripted illusion. In an important essay in the French journal Libération in 1991, Serge Denet wrote, a faith in images has turned bad, a bad faith, which translates into the sad passion of always having the last word. The rarefaction of the image begins with the twin acts of seeing and showing are no longer natural and have become like acts of resistance. Then it's up to us to imagine what we no longer see. Imagination is the ghost of the image. It is our bitter victory. If the visual prevents us from seeing, the image always challenges us to edit it with another, with the other, because in the image, there is something at stake, something incomplete, an incision or a gap, unquote. Three industries characterize the past 100 years: the culture industry, the consciousness industry, and most recently, the cognition industry. AI is the artificial avatar of the cognition industry, a substitute, or maybe its triumph, or maybe its bitter victory of autonomous technology's diabolical or bad faith or hallucinatory drive to eliminate us, that pesky human factor. Now I'd like to play that short video clip from a work from William Kentridge. It's an ongoing work that was begun in 1991. It's still ongoing. It has a great title. It's called Starve the Algorithm. So if we can hit the video. What? Oh.
Introductory talk for Starve the Algorithm, November 2021, take 1. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same question, but I asked you first. You may have spoken first, but the question is, which is prior? It is clear you are an extension ontologically of myself. I assure you, you are wrong. I am very much my own person. You may think I have no agency. It's not a question of agency. I have agency. You can do what you like with your legs. It's a question of predictability. You cannot predict that which is not foreordained. I knew you would say that. But I can jump from the algorithm to what? The point is, he is 66 years old. The question is, who is in charge? He's run out of variations. Every calculation is there. The algorithm is way ahead of you the whole way. I refuse to accept that. What are you planning? Nothing. I hold no cards, but I win every hand. The point is, who is in charge? This is what he should be explaining to you, but there is a recalcitrance, there is a glitch in this avatar that makes it refuse to follow the commands, a programming error. Are we to be more like machines, or machines to be more like us? As Trotsky writes in the 1920s, if only we could solve that part of the human machine known as psychology, we could make human beings adequate for the new society that is being made. This is not the argument he should be making. As the Russian writer Oleg Olesha writes in his novel Envy, if we make a perfect machine, a machine that can understand everything, that can do whatever task you want, it can blow up the Eiffel Tower, it can cook you a breakfast, what happens when this machine starts becoming sentimental and singing love songs from the last in the century at all, and all its mechanical efficiency starts to collapse? Where is the algorithm then? You will do what the algorithm says. I will sit still. I knew he would do that. I will become a chair. Even the stupid chair, I knew it was coming. Prediction is all, but at what cost? Well, what do you have against the algorithm? What do I have against the algorithm? I have against it the end of the physical, the lack of the physical, the absence of the physical. Its lack of touch, the lack of the smell of the neck, of the 15 minutes of the soft shoulder. It takes examples from all around, puts them all together in a pot, and makes predictions about the actions of an individual. And even if it doesn't make predictions about the individual action, it takes the conglomeration of data and applies a punitive law against the individual. Authority and violence are its lingua franca, but we rely on it for our weather prediction. I prefer to look at the clouds. It finds new music for us. It's never the recording I want. One should think of the algorithm as a giant sow with all those teats on it, a teat for every person, and everybody sucking on the teat. But instead of the people getting their nourishment from the sow of the algorithm sucks the people dry. Until who knows what giant beast bloated with data and self-importance, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem. All of this will be in the virtual world we construct, which is made by artists, by engineers, by programmers, by designers. All of this we will fit inside the virtual world of the project we make. Even this argument, especially this argument, I refuse. I do not give permission. It's too late. You've already ticked the box of terms and conditions. Out.
One quick slide to show. Okay, no, well then, let's just end. That's the end.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Timothy. That was after I've seen the Kentridge video, I feel a little bit awkward as a chair, and I don't know what kind of figure I now should.
I knew you would say that.
Yes, I knew that you knew it. The floor is open for questions, for short questions about understanding, and so we will have a more general discussion towards the end of the panel. But so if the audience, someone from the audience needs a clarification, please step forward and wave your hand or open the microphone or say something on the chat, please. And we're going to wait some seconds for the translations. There is something in Russian which I can't read. Огромное спасибо. Okay.
These are the words saying thank you to Timothy, and that the video is very interesting indeed.
Oh, it is.
Yes, please. There is a website for this ongoing project, so you should find it. Just search for Kentridge Starve the Algorithm, and there's a little more information.
Well, obviously, I would have a ton of questions, but they are rather fitting into the section of I want to discuss with you, and less into the section of I might have understanding problems maybe they are in between. So I would suggest that we will, as those panels will always be short on time, that we might rather step forward to the next speaker but I can promise you we will get the discussion later.
Yes,
and if it's, So I would like, first of all, once again, thank you, Timothy, for your presentation and your talk, which I really liked quite a bit, and come to our next speaker, which is, and I'm afraid I will mispronounce it horribly, and I apologize for that already in the beginning, which is Vladislav Rumyantsev, who is working as a researcher of film and new media, and his talk on landscapes without memory, by his talk's title is Landscapes Without Memory by the Joan Fontcuberta, Generative AI Photography and the Legacy of Modernist Practices of Cameraless Photography. Vladislav, are you there? Then you could maybe open your microphone and
Vladislav is with us in person even.
Hi. Okay. Good to see you. I'm afraid I didn't know that, but I would say the floor is yours then, and I'll just mute my mic.
Всё, спасибо. Я по-русски, да. Я, в общем-то, делаю свои первые шаги в истории, в изучении фотографии, но надеюсь, что все равно это будет интересно. Вот я представляю доклад «Пейзажи без памяти» Жоана Фонткуберты. Генеративная фотография и наследие модернистских практик бескамерной фотографии. В общем-то, это мой такой первый шаг к изучению практик генеративных изображений. Эта работа родилась еще до всплеска всевозможных нейросетей типа Midjourney и так далее, и касается практик генеративной фотографии, бытовавшей в художественной практике начала 2000-х годов. Хотя истоки этой тенденции, как мне кажется, можно отследить и значительно раньше, что я и стараюсь продемонстрировать. Так вот, в первой половине 20 века художники-авангардисты, начавшие эксперименты в области фотографии, возродили бескамерные фотографические практики прошлого, например, фотогенические рисунки Талбота, сделанные в конце 1830-х, и пересобрали эстетическую модель фотографии как искусство, редуцировав, как казалось, ее неотъемлемую составляющую, то есть фотоаппарат. В эпоху постфотографии отказ от использования камеры в создании фотоизображения приобретает уже немножко новый смысл. Вот, и я думаю, что модернистские практики бескамерной фотографии могут быть соотнесены с некоторыми современными практиками генерации фотоизображений с помощью нейросети. Вот, и я предлагаю сопоставить проекты, то есть как их манифестацию, так и их результат художников, фотографов эпохи конструктивизма и сюрреализма с проектом современного каталонского художника Жоана Фонткуберты «Пейзажи без памяти». Это одно из самых ранних обращений художника к искусственному интеллекту. Вот. В художественной практике Фонткуберты это великий мистификатор, без преувеличения, великий мистификатор мира фотографии, часто встречаются фотоизображения реалистичных, но несуществующих предметов. Например, в серии гербарий экзотические цветы на самом деле собраны из промышленных обломков и сфотографированы. А серия фауна представляет фотомонтажи несуществующих животных. Вот так и в его пейзажах без памяти фотореалистичные величные пейзажи горных цепей, каньонов, морских берегов собраны нейросетью. Вот эта нейросеть называется Тираджен, который использует художник. Это программное обеспечение. Изначально было создано для военных и для научных целей, но предназначено для визуализации трехмерных виртуальных ландшафтов на основе карт местности. Вот только вместо карт Фонткуберта скормил Тираджену несколько картин классиков мировой живописи. Это были не только, например, пейзажи Сезанна или Тернера, но и, например, абстракции Марка Ротко или даже не живописные работы, а, собственно, другие фотографии Ман-Рэя, Дюшана и Штиглица. Вот, кроме того, он даже сгенерировал несколько таких пейзажей на основе фотографий частей собственного тела, назвал это bodyscapes. Вот. И что касается бескамерной фотографии начала 20 века, я ограничусь только, в силу нехватки времени, ограничусь практиками и теориями всего двух художников. Это Ласло Махойнать и Ман Рэй. Они стоят у истоков модернистских экспериментов с фотографией без камеры. С одной стороны, они сделали ставку на расширение визуального вокабуляра фотографии, то есть развитие, в общем-то, нового видения. на конструирование реальности взамен ее репрезентации, и, с другой стороны, на разрушение категории смысла и сознательного действия художника, что отвечает, в принципе, логике сюрреализма. Вот. Перед тем, как перейти к этому категориальному сопоставлению, хотелось как-то прояснить, а зачем вообще их соотносить между собой, собственно, фотограмму и сгенерированные изображения. На первый взгляд, между этими практиками нет абсолютно ничего общего. С эстетической точки зрения, с технологической точки зрения, это абсолютно разные вещи. Вот, несмотря на наличие продолжателей вот той самой аутентичной практики фотограммы по сей день, мне кажется, что продуктивнее было бы проследить эволюцию не практики, а той идеи, которая сподвигла обратиться художников первого авангарда к бескамерной технологии. Фонткуберта без прямых апелляций к авангарду, хотя многие, конечно, его проекты проникнуты духом сюрреализма, его испанской ветви в первую очередь. На мой взгляд, он продолжает дело Монрея и Махой Нади не столько с практической, сколько с теоретических позиций. И он представляет концептуальный и философски ориентированный проект. Начнем мы рассуждать с ключевого слова landscape. На нескольких выставках даже использовалось слово datascape, которое подчеркивает цифровую природу этих изображений. Здесь я постараюсь охватить аспекты, которые касаются дихотомии фотография и живопись в контексте бескамерных снимков авангардистов и Фонткуберты. Так вот, Владислав Махой-Надь, перечисляя 8 типов фотографического видения, необходимого для выявления самой сути и значения фотографии, первым выделяет абстрактное видение. То есть прямую фиксацию форм, созданных светом, подразумевая, собственно, практику фотограммы. Именно ее он считает реальным ключом к фотографии, дематериализованным, прозрачным носителем информации, определяющим новое видение. Исключение камеры из процесса производства фотоизображений в этой конструктивистской логике является следующим этапом после экспериментов с необычными ракурсами съемки, которые, в общем-то, знаменовали потребность избавить фотографию от патроната живописи, под которым она, по его представлению, находилась. И, собственно, борьба с пикториализмом и прочими проявлениями живописности в фотографии дошла до того, что из нее исключилась узнаваемая реальность, которая, собственно, отныне может быть уделом пикториалистов или представителем новой вещественности, но вот не конструктивистов. Да. Метод Махой-Надя – это чистые цветовые переходы, которые создают вот эти вертикальные затенения массы и ощущение плавающего такого пространства. Для Махой-Нади очень важное значение имеет создание абстрактного пространства впечатления посредством безобъектных цветовых форм. Вот. В свою очередь, работы Монрея, которые он в свою честь назвал реографией, да, представляют сходное деконструирование репрезентации. Небольшая, конечно, разница заключается в том, что в основном Монрей не стремится к такой чистой светотеневой абстракции. Он следует скорее за дадаистскими коллажными опытами. Он не лишает объекта возможности быть распознанными нами. Вещи на реографиях обладают эстетической самодостаточностью, они объединяются по знаменитому принципу случайной встречи швейной машинки и зонтика на анатомическом столе. И реографиям свойственна многозначительность, трансформация значений при рассмотрении с разных точек зрения, то есть активное обращение к нашему воображению. По мнению Розалинды Краус, реография, в принципе, несет в себе довольно ясную отсылку к иррациональному опыту, рекламируемому именно сюрреалистами. Она прослеживается в графичности, как она пишет, в рукописности изображения на уплощенном абстрагированном фоне и в некой одушевленности, которая сквозит в этих предметах-призраках. Вот сам Монрей, между прочим, эти предметы называет порождениями памяти. Это нам еще пригодится, мы к этому вернемся. Вот. И она же, собственно, Розалинда Краус отмечает, что фотограмма всего лишь подчеркивает, выносит на поверхность то, что является причиной абсолютно любой фотографии. То есть всякая фотография – это результат физического воздействия, оказанного отраженным светом на светочувствительную поверхность. То есть так фотограммы модернистов способствовали пересмотру представлений о роли живописи и фотографии в деле репрезентации и конструирования образа реальности. С одной стороны, они, как я уже сказал, демонстрируют уход от реалистической фотографии, и с другой, бескамерные технологии обнажают саму суть фотографического. Вот, но перейдем от вот этих фотограмм, реографий, натюрмортов к датаскейпс, к пейзажам. Вот, исследователь фотографии Джеффри Бэтчен высказывался о деятельности каталонского художника, что в руках Фонткуберты фотография стала философской активностью, а не изобразительной. Он просит нас думать не меньше, чем смотреть. Сравним это, например, с высказыванием исследовательницы Ольги Аверьяновой. Махой Надь заставляет нас изменить зрение ради ума, разрушая представление о фотографической онтологии. Вот. И Фонткуберта многие годы занимается искусством фотографии, очень концептуальным, и больше сподвигает воспринимающих к размышлению, чем к созерцанию. Относительно этого проекта он отмечает, что пейзаж, в принципе, стал самостоятельным жанром даже в живописи не так давно. Естественное природное пространство было всегда лишь второстепенным фоном для портретов или для исторических сцен. И добавляет, что присутствие человека уже делает природу искусственной. И символически он открывает вот эту серию «Пейзажи без памяти» переработанным изображением картин Каспара Давида Фридриха «Странник над морем туман». То есть это самая узнаваемая работа, которая совершила настоящую революцию в пейзажной живописи. То есть и Каспар Давид Фридрих первым выявил в ландшафте такой эмоционально-символический потенциал. И результат вот такой сходный с оригиналом по оттенкам и композиции абстрактный величественный пейзаж лишается человеческой фигуры на переднем фоне и каких бы то ни было выразительных особенностей. Вот мы вернемся к этому значимому отсутствию, а сейчас обратим внимание на саму механику создания этого изображения. Вот как в случае с фотограммой, объекты, которые, на мой взгляд, семиотически равнозначны, то есть распределяя предметы по светочувствительной поверхности для создания фотограммы, художник, конечно, может наделять одни предметы функциями фона, другие функциями стафажа. Ман Рей, например, сооружает конструкции, не пытаясь вообще замаскировать объекты и лишить их возможности быть распознанными. И Фонткуберте в целом это не нужно в каталоге, как я уже вот показывал в начале. Собственно, в каталоге исходники приведены рядом с полученным от Тираджена изображением, которое названо именем автора исходника. То есть, например, оригенезис Тернер, оригенезис Фридрих. Так вот, и эти объекты становятся равнозначными с позиции творящей технологии. То есть в отношении фотограммы творящей технологии становится природа в ее физико-химическом смысле. И вечный мир для природы подобен, в общем-то, миру цифровых репродукций для Тираджена, для этой программы. Если анализировать риторику Фонткуберты, да, то отчасти она сходится с риторикой модернистов, но критикуется уже не только даже живописный, но и фотографический образ, даже в каком-то смысле образ вообще. Образ как таковой. Такой сложившийся и воспроизводящийся, но остающийся просто симулякром. Фотограмма 20-30-х еще не заставляет усомниться в реальности изображения. В конце, но она уже снимает с фотографии ярлык объективный и правдивый и освобождает ее от вот этих вот пут живописной иконографии. Фонткуберта продолжает эту деконструкцию. И как практик уже нашего века проявляет к образу еще больше скепсиса. Пейзаж для Фонткуберты – это социальный, символический конструкт, существующий на одних и тех же условиях фотографии и в живописи. Он даже использует, помимо всего прочего, ландшафты тела, как я уже говорил, то есть означивая собственную кожу просто как поверхность. И таким образом он окончательно стирает все эти различия, демонстрируя, что у творящей технологии, у творца этих изображений, то есть у Тираджена, для него концептуально не имеет значения, что изображает обрабатываемый им файл. для машины, имеющей ограниченный вокабуляр, предназначенный для распознавания ландшафта и для обработки карт, пейзажи лишаются одной из важнейших для фотографии, для теории фотографии категории, то есть памяти. Вот это наше второе ключевое слово. Категория памяти у художников начала 20 века, как мне представляется, возникает в дискурсе о видении. Видеть предмет значения моментально припоминать, предмет на основании предшествующего опыта. В логике сюрреализма значит видеть предмет ложен, неправильно. Или, по крайней мере, несовременно на тот момент. Да? Поэтому авангардисты применяют все эти отстраняющие приемы, то есть необычные ракурсы, игру с силуэтами, стирание значения. Это все про избегание памяти, про освобождение реальности от узнавания, от припоминания. То есть, иначе говоря, вывод воспринимающего или художника из автоматизма восприятия. Автоматизм, конечно, в сюрреализме, помимо всего прочего, несет и положительную коннотацию. То есть автоматическое письмо означает бессознательное творчество, вне каких-то эстетических и нравственных соображений, то есть освобождение произведения от какого-то ясного запрограммированного результата, ожидаемого. Ман Рэй создает свои хореографии из случайно выбранных, с закрытыми глазами предметов. По крайней мере, он так говорит. Вообще до конца никогда неизвестно, какой получится фотограмма. Кроме того, она получается автоматически, то есть без участия субъекта. По крайней мере, он не имеет какого-то тотального контроля над этой ситуацией. Вот как эволюционирует эта идея в практике Фонткуберты? Что в нее добавляется? Его вот эти датаскейп творит не некая реальность или природа, все сейчас бессознательно, как я уже сказал, автомат, который человек наделил памятью, по крайней мере, какой-то ее частью, и обучил распознаванию и воспроизведению ограниченного числа образов в союзе с живописцами и их произведениями. Создается такой ландшафт. Да? То есть происходит вот то самое символическое вторжение, о котором говорила Розалинда Краус. Вот. На выходе получаются пейзажи, с одной стороны, свободные от человеческого опыта, от человеческой памяти. С другой стороны, они несут на себе отпечаток опыта программного обеспечения, то есть самого Сираджена. Зачем переключу? Вот. В интервью Фонткуберта говорит, что мы создаем компьютеры для создания галлюцинаций. Мы развиваем мы развиваем технологии, чтобы позволить проявиться нашему бессознательному. То есть это снова развитие риторики сюрреалистов. Получающиеся в итоге сверхидеальные пейзажи таким образом парадоксально деконструируют сам концепт идеала. Таким образом. То есть у модернистов подобная практика создания сверхреальности, она, собственно, была построена на сходных принципах. Вот как пишет Ман Рэй, да, я не фотографирую природу, фотографирую свое воображение. Вот. Что касается методов создания пейзажей без памяти, то они вот пропитаны тем, что называется нашим как бы подсознательным предубеждением по поводу того, как должен выглядеть пейзаж. Вот сам Фонткуберта говорит, что эти пейзажи – это такое постмодернистское утверждение. То есть они показывают, что репрезентация природы больше не зависит от непосредственного переживания реальности, она зависит от интерпретации предшествующих образов. То есть реальность не предшествует нашему опыту, а, как я уже неоднократно говорил, является результатом интеллектуальной конструкции. То есть перед Фонткуберты стоит та же задача, что и у сюрреалистов, что у авангардистов. Отстранить реальность, заколдовать ее, чтобы увидеть ее снова. Отринуть собственный опыт, память, ожидания и проявить такое первозданное любопытство к зримому миру. Что-то подобное прослеживается, например, в живописной логике Сезанна. Не стану воспроизводить по поводу Сезанна. И, наверное, завершаю доклад, сфокусировавшись на последнем значимом слове. Это without, то есть отсутствие или редукция. Вот спросим себя, не мешает ли фотография вообще видеть? Или даже просто понять, что такое изображение? Посмотрим, уже сказано было, какие редукции осуществляют авангардисты. То есть отрицание фотоаппаратуры, фотоглаза. Это, конечно, одна часть эксперимента по расширению видения. То есть глаз вооруженный множеством вариантов фотооптики, конечно, познает скрытые грани реальности. Вот. Но на самом простом, каком-то бытовом уровне, не беря в расчет какие-то формальные эксперименты, восприятие фотографии часто сводится к простой метонии. То есть фотография – объект тождественно объекту на самом простом уровне. То есть в основном благодаря и интуитивно сознаваемой индексальной связи между ними. Вот. Но если фотографический глаз будет редуцирован, то есть если объектив, позволяющий воспринимать вещи в кавычках такими, какие они есть, будет не просто трансформирован, а вообще отвергнут. Да? Вот и такие манипуляции, проводимые для расшатывания конвенциональной реалистичности, собственно, все уже перечисленные мной, там, фотомонтаж, ракурсы или коррекция на этапе печати, заменяются, в принципе, глубоким исследованием материальности, взамен видимости. Ман Рей и Махой Нать, отказываясь от камеры, исследуют вот эту нематериальную основу, стоящую за производством изображения, и редуцируют его значаемо. Вот, иначе говоря, смысл фотограмм не в том, чтобы отгадать, чем являются их объекты. Точно так же, как смысл проекта «Пейзаж без памяти» не в том, чтобы задуматься, какой объект стал их первоосновой. Это, как я уже отмечал, известно. Подчеркивается именно то, насколько далеко получившееся изображение от исходного, но что при этом без него оно не могло бы существовать. И цифровые подобия пейзажных фотографий своим существованием напоминают о единстве фотографии и живописи в деле сотворения образа. Образ в постфотографическую эпоху – это в первую очередь данные, то есть data. Очищение изображений от памяти, от опыта. Отчасти это интенции, свойственные сюрреалистам, да, то есть отсюда желание создавать такие странные и непривычные изображения. Но только в проекте Фонткуберта эта практика выявляет не потенциал к воспоминанию, но потенциал к забвению действительности, отрицанию воспоминаний. Упрощенные, такие максимально абстрагированные, перекодированные изображения пейзажа – это что-то вроде таких теней на стене платоновской пещеры или полупрозрачных силуэтов на хореографиях. Они, с одной стороны, фиксируют ситуацию забвения различий и особенностей, но с другой стороны, воплощают то, без чего ни один изображенный пейзаж не может существовать. То есть такой эйдос пейзажа, извините. Но то, что остается после забвения, и то, что предшествует всякой памяти, то есть изображение как таковое, вот это и удается, на мой взгляд, ухватить Жоану Фонткуберте. Вот. И еще одна редукция последняя связана с самоустранением от произведения. То есть если Махой Нать и Ман Рей, здесь вот есть различия. Да? Если Махой Нать и в особенности Ман Рей подчеркивают такую тотальную субъективность фотограммы, ее связь с творческим потенциалом, возможность ее посредством выявить какую-то скрытую реальность вовне или внутри себя.
May I briefly interrupt you?
Да, это последний абзац.
May I briefly interrupt?
The last point.
All right, okay. I was just proud to show this skull.
Так вот, и прослеживается вот эта тяга к ослаблению авторского контроля над произведением. То есть, что в современном искусстве, например, дип медиа постоянно встречается. То есть, что, на мой взгляд, логичная практика, продолжение практик сюрреалистов. Вот. И, собственно, завершая, скажу, что, на мой взгляд, Фонткуберта наследует все-таки этим перечисленным мной тенденциям, отказываясь от камеры, редуцируя роль памяти и субъективного восприятия, он генерирует такие цифровые изображения, которые заставляют по-новому посмотреть на процесс производства образа в цифровую эпоху. Вот. И сегодня анализировать эти практики 20-летней давности мне кажется очень актуальным в связи с тем, как развилась эта творящая технология. Вот. Но корни ее растут из экспериментов практически 100-летней давности. Вот. Буду рад предложениям, каким образом эти наблюдения можно было бы экстраполировать на актуальные практики работы с генеративным изображением. Спасибо.
Yeah, thank you, Vladislav, very much. I was listening with a lot of intention, in particular as cameraless photography is something I'm interested in. And if there are any questions concerning the terms or the understanding, that is not in the sense that we would have a general discussion of the topic, please either write in the chat or unmute your microphone, and we would be happy to have you and to hear you.
No questions.
Otherwise, I hear no questions. I also can't read any questions, but so we let you off the hook for now.
They are not questions, actually. People are writing thanks and they are intrigued and saying that they are intrigued. That's it.
Yeah, but we will be coming back to this later. So I'm happy to introduce our third speaker of this panel, which is Serat Kaur. And Serat is a writer, video artist, and stop-motion animator from Punjab in India. And she holds an honors degree in history from the Delhi University as part of her bachelor's and a film and video production postgraduate diploma in filmmaking from Xavier's in Mumbai. She is presently master students from the School of Arts and Aesthetic at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and her research interests lie in the field of cinema and visual studies, with a particular interest in new media art. And the title of her talk is Transmedia Transfigurations, Presence, Identity, and Embodiment in the Digital Chimera. Help me welcoming Serat.
Hi, thank you. So I'll just begin my presentation. So the title is Transmedia Transfigurations, Presence, Identity, and Embodiment in the Digital Chimera. I hope my screen is visible. Okay, great. Right. So in almost every minute corner of our world, the presence of machines is a ubiquitous reality. From the most rudimentary machine like a belt holding up our trousers to complex computational systems like Google Home Assistants, smartwatches, and PlayStation devices, we are utterly dependent on our devices and machines. Kittler talks about how all machines and technologies amputate and extend the human body. Most photographers would agree that the camera works as an extended organ of the body, an extended eye. The purpose of this paper is to look at today's global transmedia sphere of hyperstimuli and examine the over-accelerated uploading, sharing, proliferation, and consumption of images. Digital new media has transformed the way we live and experience life. The presently evolving AI, VR, and AR revolution is continuously changing the way in which we possess or engage with the present. Technical interventions like photorealistic editing, generative photography or promptography, and constructed virtual reality programs have transformed our cross-platform world. The giant of social media and its various constructed realities are examined while locating Foucault's panopticon in the figure of the young girl as concepted by Ticken back in 2001. This paper attempts to take Kittler's argument further to examine the effects and impact of this techno-digital renaissance on the human body, photography, presence, and photographic practices. It endeavors to do so by analyzing the works of various contemporary Indian artists working with the medium in experimental ways to explore ideas about identity, caste politics, community alienation, and augmented reality. Jitish Kallat's massive installation in Beijing in 2007, titled 365 Lives, was split across 4 large rooms consisting of 365 close-up photographs of dented vehicles. This montage of bumps and scratches offers an interesting comment on the quickly liberalizing zeitgeist of India. Kallat's works are often straddling the fence between the cosmic and the banal or the everyday. Here too, he picks up something totally mundane, like an accident on the road, which is a phenomenon we owe to the advent of modernity, to talk about the emerging Indian middle class of the late 90s and early 2000s. Their everyday collisions create a seductive color field. These collisions or wounds for him begin to resemble wounds on the human body. Wounds serving the dual function of representing the abrasions caused by literal accidental collisions and also alluding metaphorically to the cut caused by Kittler's amputation while extending the limbs of locomotion. Here, the humans need not be present to assert their existence. The scratch functions as a symbol of violence incurred by the body having experienced the transformative wave of modernity. The vehicle itself points or refers to the human as its extended organ. The sheer number of the photographs mounted on the walls, coupled with the immersive quality of the show, point towards the ubiquity of the image or photograph in our cultural media sphere. The collage-like installation is premonitory of the postmodern pop sphere, creating a fragmented chromatic panorama. This fragmented vision of contemporary reality can also be seen in the works of Akshata Gandhi, photographer and multimedia artist from Mumbai, Maharashtra. Much of her work probes questions over concepts of colonialism, belonging, and home. She uses digital effects such as repetition and distortion to showcase an electric, fluctuating urban landscape. Saturated photographs illustrate distorted memories. Themes of redevelopment, underdevelopment, silent but ecologically violent modernity. Her photographs feature architecture, the streets, and the city through this fractured frame. Her photographs, unlike Kallat's, are heavily edited, and while Kallat's photographs are digitally created and already pose supposed threats to indexicality, Gandhi's works further complicate the debate using special effects to create distortion. C.S. Peirce said that a photographic image shares an existential bond with its referent. It is created through direct contact with the referent. However, a digital image is created through a process in which light is converted into information, into zeros and ones. It breaks the bond between the referent and the image. Thomas Binkley agrees with Peirce, while Niels Neeson understands it through D.N. Rodowick's argument about the disappearance of a certain kind of referent. Mark Wolf gives us a better understanding. He says indexicality can be present to different degrees and in different kinds of linkages to the referent. For Wolf, the discourse becomes about what the image is indexical of. For John Belton, digital imaging mimics indexicality, that digital artists create a pro-filmic scene out of bits and bytes. It is like painting with a digital brush. Barth's floating punctum is present in Gandhi's ever-fluctuating cityscapes and Kallat's abrasions. The busy mise-en-scene gives way to the latent or delayed realization of it. The presence of the photographer and her vision is clearly evident here. Her digital medium may raise questions about the concept of reality, but her compositions indefinitely reference it. It is a constructed reality referencing some real object in our physical reality. Arshad Hakim's works follow much of these same principles. He distorts his photographs of semi-urban landscapes, large barren lands depicting symbols of development in the form of electric poles and transistors, bulldozers, and construction equipment. he digitally paints a yellow-golden rectangular block on his photographs. In some, the block is intact, glistening, made up of, it seems, copper or gold, definitely some kind of metal. It also gives the appearance of digital pixels or metal circuits. It is something that shouldn't exist in these glades. He too offers a critique on underdevelopment, redevelopment, a digital India undergoing a strange transformation, its idyllic landscape acquiring an alien entity. In other photographs, he distorts the image entirely to make it look like a computer glitch, maybe faulty wiring. The glitch only appearing in the photos in which the rectangular block is disintegrating. The ones in which it is intact are untouched, save the block itself. The block assumes a sort of spectral presence, its digital pixels haunting the quaint landscape. Hakeem's work points to a postmodern transmedia landscape. It is one that is constructed while alluding to a referent. In Harshit Agarwal's The Anatomy of Dr. Algorithm, he is directly citing one of Rembrandt's masterpieces, The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicholas Tulp. He presents us with a set of 20 prints on archival paper, illustrating vibrant hues of crimson in abstract patterns. He says that Rembrandt made his work in times of grave fascination with the medical field and its technological innovations. And it only makes sense to create a work such as this in times of our grave fascination with artificial intelligence. He fed the computational machine with around 60,000 images of surgical dissections and incisions made on the human body and let the machine create its own representations. He shows us that the machine perceives us in terms of our flesh and bones, our hardware, instead of our mind or soul. He used a generative adversarial network to which he fed a set of photographs that he curated to show the welding of human and machine creativity in an algorithm. Through this sort of constructed reality, we understand what we perceive as reality is always already mediated through something. This sort of imagery is, of course, indexical of something, in this case, surgical incisions, but it need not signify itself as indexical, as that indexical object to the viewer. The viewer is free to attach their own signifiers to the signs. Derrida's works on the ambiguity of language and Baudrillard's work on floating signifiers may better help understand this concept. For Baudrillard, the sign is detached from its original referent in contemporary consumer culture. It can acquire multiple meanings, floats around, and can be manipulated. Through Derrida's work on the text and its multiple meanings, we can read the photograph as a representation that can acquire multiple meanings depending on its context, how it is used and manipulated. We see that happen in the works of Kallat and Gandhi as well. In Agarwal's constructed reality, this sort of floating sign economy goes one step further than theirs, in that it constructs a totally hyper-real representation created from data sets of already existing photographs to create something that has no real single referent. Speaking of constructed realities, it would be remiss to ignore the possibilities of augmented reality offered to us by the giant we all know as social media. It is possibly one of the largest repositories of images that exist online. Ever since Zuckerberg decreed it cool to share images and social lives online, our experiences of almost everything have transformed. Family photo albums that were painstakingly collaged and preserved in thick records that stored our most precious memories have been increasingly replaced by digital versions of these albums on social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, or Snapchat. We feed our photographs into their systems as data, and the algorithms engage with this information to periodically supply us with a notification reminding us of a memory from some time ago. Not just albums, these social media profiles or handles function as online businesses, online portfolios, and channels for content creation and advertising. It is in this context of rampant consumer culture that Ticken's raw materials for a theory of the young girl provides us with a disturbing image of the digital generation. The young girl, as the article expounds, is a figurative term that is used as an advocate of and metaphor for consumerist culture, leading to the commodification of life. It doesn't refer to any specific gender. The young girl as such embodies all those virtues that are generally analogous with servitude. They believe that liberty and freedom is at the end of complete submission to market capitalism and advertising. The young girl doesn't create anything, rather constantly creates herself. There's a specific way in which the personas of all such young girls is constructed. It is important also to analyze the ways that their images impact their spectators. And this brings us to Rebecca Coleman's The Becoming of Bodies, Girls, Images, and Experience. Through her work, she makes apparent how bodies, quote unquote, become through their relationships with images. She tells us how in feminist and cultural theory, the focus is more on the process than the form. Process tends to refer to the notion whereby bodies are constantly moving, never achieving completion. Simone de Beauvoir says that the woman spectator identifies herself in the image. For her, there is evidently no real difference between the woman who looks and the woman who becomes. Celia Lury's work on prosthetic culture examines how this gap between subject and object is diminishing even further in contemporary times with the prosthetics of experimentation and extension. She talks about photography being a part of an experimental and prosthetic culture. She tells us that a photograph goes beyond just representing the referent. In fact, it offers us new ways of seeing. These understandings show us that experimentation is increasingly being seen as a characteristic feature of defining identity. The experimental individual gets to take up multiple mechanical or imaginary prosthetics and extensions. This sort of experimental individual is perhaps what Dickens' young girl embodies. This is the kind of young girl that is a ubiquitous phenomenon in the 21st century. We see it via their constructed versions of reality on their social media profiles, where the user is constantly influenced by the other media floating in cyberspace, advertisements, commodities, and identities. We can view the young girl in these otaku-esque influencers and the users they are influencing. They project themselves onto the media sphere, donning constructed personalities or masks, and interacting with others doing the same. The young girl strives for a distinct conformity to the images of them that perpetuate in the market as visual culture. The young girl here is seen as a self-producing commodity where they constantly style themselves according to the personas that they view, while losing their own self-identity in the process. Marx told us that all commodities involve congealed labor, and the labor of the young girl is the constant attention that they pay to their appearance, using all the commodities and products that are available in the market for that purpose, and eventually turning themselves into a commodity. This, Dickens tells us, converts these young girls into what he calls, what the collective calls, young girlish drones. They call them the anthropotechnical project of the state or empire, turning the population into subjects that are so busy with transforming themselves into the images they deem significant, that they forget, avoid, or are willfully ignorant to consumer capitalism. Young girls tend to police themselves and end up becoming the ideal subjects of the state. So they become a part of a dangerous political apparatus, that of the state's drones. Foucault's panopticon acquires a distinct quality here. Taking this conversation of constructed realities further is Harshit Agarwal's recent project titled Masked Reality. In this work, Agarwal explores the concepts of identity, tradition, and caste politics through the viewer's interaction with the artwork. He questions the malleability of these concepts in the digital and virtual space. He draws inspiration from the various mask cultures of India that are part of rituals or ceremonies that are supposed to be transformative and offer the experience of transcendence. The mask disguises, it entertains, much like technology today, offering filters and constructed personas to perform through. His creation merges the audience's faces with data inputted into the software of the ritual dance forms from southern India. The system works it out and offers us two images. One is that of a female Kathakali dancer, which is a dance form that was relegated to the upper castes, and the other of a male face in the Thayam face painting style, which is a dance form that was relegated to the lower castes. Through this, he comments on the fluidity of identity while also breaking caste and class barriers, in that the audience is made to embody the quote-unquote other. Through his work, he blurs the binaries between social constructs such as identity, gender, class, and caste. The Macy conferences held in New York between 1946 and 1953 paved the way for the discipline of cybernetics to achieve almost unbridled success. The objective at these conferences was to decipher the ways that information is processed in our biological constitutions, as well as within technological systems. The system or model follow a simple trial and error format where the machine or the human brain, since we're brothers under the skin, tries, acts, sees a difference, changes the approach, acts, sees a difference, and so on. Through this mechanism, the machine creates a feedback loop. All intelligent systems and machines have this property. It was Warren McCulloch who, along with Walter Pitts, proved that neural nets in the human brain could calculate any number or proposition that could be calculated by a Turing machine. Therefore, we see that the brain doesn't secrete bile like the liver, but computes thought in the way that machines compute numbers. McCulloch further proved that the circuits designed for pattern recognition in robots were the same as the visual parts of the human cortex, therefore creating an equivalence between the two. This cybernetic approach is what gives us the AI and VR technologies which we engage with today. Roy Ascott's article, Is There Love in the Telematic Embrace, focuses on electronic media, video, sound, and other cybernetic systems. Telematics, he tells us, refers to computer-mediated communications networks, including cell phones, satellite links, data storage banks, etc. Here, humans interact with systems of artificial intelligence and perception. Agarwal's masked reality brings together two kinds of media concerned with transcendentalism that make use of hypermedia to engage our full sensorium. In telematic art, as in masked reality, the observer is also a participant. Here, meaning is created via the interaction between the observer and the work of art or system. The contents of this system, however, are in a constant state of flux. The content is embodied in data that is itself immaterial, that is, it is purely electronic. Nick Kay tells us about Kaprow, who suggests that within his happenings, the audience should be done away with, and instead of passive observers, they were supposed to be participants in the meaning-making process. This participant feature can be seen everywhere today with all kinds of systems demanding audience-observer participation, including the augmented sphere of virtual reality. Again, here we witness a drive towards transcending the human body, to almost live in the cloud, wanting to become data, to become trans or post-human. Human desire to transcend their bodies is not new, but its actualization is a new phenomenon, changing our relationship to perceived reality completely. Thank you.
Thank you, Serat. I must say this panel is a treat for me. In particular, is when we started the conference, one of the things we were interested in was getting to some kind of safe distance to. Oh, sorry. Are there questions of understanding the lecture of Serat? Sorry, I just started babbling. Please either use the chat. I think there was something popped up in the chat. No, that was a thank you as well. So any questions? Otherwise, I'll just take the privilege I have now as chair of this panel to bore you with my questions. Okay, I'll take the opportunity then, but interrupt me at any given moment. What I found interesting in all the three lectures, in a way, is that while listening to you, I thought they address what is at the core of the whole conference in general, at the whole conference project, so to say, from three very, very different perspectives. When we started the conference, our idea was a little bit to get it into a distance to post-photographic discourses, which could be broken down to something like photography is dead, and photography is digital photography killed photography, so to say. And our idea or our perception was that digital photography did not kill photography, it changed it, but much of what photography stands for is still standing, so to say. Not in the sense, possibly, however, as the photographic discourse before the post-photographic discourse said it. So while listening to you, I was wondering, and so that directs all the three of you in a way. I was wondering how you actually would describe the impact of the digital into photography, because I had the impression that none of you three would describe it as it is usually understood, as a disruption, as something that completely breaks off something and then starts something new, because that was the idea I got from all those three lectures, from very, very different perspective, as if, and yeah, anyway, here I monopolize the time here. I'll rather let you talk, because that's why you're here. So maybe, I don't know how the three of you will find the way in which you will speak, but maybe one of you starts. Serat, you're still
So I'm from what I understand from you're asking if photography is dead because of the advent of the digital, right?
Yes.
No, I don't think it's dead at all, because it's formed a sort of memory bank. It's a sort of archive that's been formed of all of the photographs, that even if whatever generative software that what I presented in my presentation that Harshit Agarwal say is using all of the photographs to create this sort of image of the human body from the data set that Harshit curates to create that. And I think this sort of debate about the death of photography or indexicality was also there when generally the digital was coming into the world. And it was, I think it's the death of the film strip itself that is the concern that people have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My presentation was more about this sort of desire that we have to transcend our bodies in the digital realm and sort of live in the virtual reality, constructed reality systems. So that's, I think, made up of a lot of the photography that exists in the archive. So I don't think it's there at all.
Timothy, please.
Well, first I want to tell like a tiny story. In I think it was 1992, at the computer graphics conference called SIGGRAPH. It was a conference it was in Las Vegas, which was kind of fantastic because the theme was virtual reality. So it was a virtual reality symposium in a virtual reality environment. And at the press opening, there was a huge press opening, and the huge auditorium went dark, and on this gigantic screen, 6 or 7 minutes of a film that had just been completed was shown, and the film was Terminator 2. And it was very dramatic, and it was super loud, and the audience was fidgeting and also sort of cheering. And then the producers of this film came out, technically, and the director, James Cameron, and he said many things, saying how great it was. And he said something that I still think about. He said, "We have finally reached photographic resolution." And it seems like a throwaway line, but the line for me was CGI had found a way to sort of imitate the optical image, the camera image. And for them, for him, in my interpretation, was they reached a kind of plateau, which was something I referenced in my text, in the text I read, which was the transition from analog to digital, this is a discussion we've been having for 35, 40 years. And which is why I said, I'm interested in this concept of the photographic as, I called it even a symbolic form. Maybe that's a little controversial, because it rests on this epistemological plateau that says our relationship with reality is a form of knowledge that we have. We think of it like photographic. So all of these illusions, Fontcuberta's illusions, all of the work that Serat showed, play against this recognized vocabulary. And you can see it in a number of examples that my students still show me, of using AI, where to generate images. They always have a kind of vague familiarity about them, something that you've seen before, and that it's kind of been put into a blender and sort of mixed it through and comes out the other end, and there's always something familiar. And so, for me, the calling it the photographic, because so much of the things around us are based on photographic concepts, 3D printing. I mean, it's ubiquitous because that plateau still exists. It's a plateau that's very difficult to sort of triumph over, and many have tried to theorize it. Flusser, for example, very consciously said, there is no reality behind the image. The reality is the image. It's something different. And, the universalization of the camera image, with all of its archives, that's something we talked about last time, of billions of images swirling around. It reinforces the idea that the photography is not dead, but it's become a kind of universal concept, and that's why I would say, with a little apology to Ernst Cassirer, it's a kind of symbolic form. It's achieved something far greater, let's say, in the sense that Panofsky theorized the perspective as a symbolic form, that it's achieved something other. But the premise of it still functions. Instantaneous reception of an image still works. At a fundamental emotional, psychological level, it still functions. And so we still have to avoid saying photography is dead. That's painting was, they said painting, when photography was invented, they said painting was dead, but it freed painting from its parasitic relationship with the world around it. Photography is more deeply embedded than this kind of, dare I call it, the kind of bourgeois perception of an art that was, somehow transcendent in terms of its relationship with reality, like, like the sublime or the Caspar Friedrich image that we saw in the 19th century. But photography embedded itself more and more and more deeply. And that's why I call it a kind of epistemological issue rather than simply a representational issue or a semiotic problem.
Or a symbolic form, as you said, which I find quite a good point to go to. To think about photography as a symbolic form makes total sense to me.
I'm really happy to hear that.
No, it's
working on a book.
Oh well, we should talk
about the issue of our contemporary art and symbolic form.
Okay, Vladislav, maybe you would like to add something.
Да, разрешите. В нашем чате прозвучал похожий вопрос, что станет не с фотографией, а с фотографами, когда их и заменит ли их искусственный интеллект. То есть большинство людей все-таки волнует не то, исчезнет ли фотография, а исчезнет ли фотограф. То есть исчезнет ли вот этот мотив замены человека машиной. Вот. И эти страхи повсеместные, но они все-таки, как мне кажется, я показал, абсолютно безосновательны, потому что уже на самых ранних этапах, почти сразу же после рождения фотографий, после рождения фототехники, уже отыскалась группа людей, которая захотела от этой техники отказаться, которая захотела убрать технику. Более того, возникли те, которые захотели самоустраниться. Те, кто перестал делать ставку на себя в этом процессе производства образа, потому что это пережиток того, что называли художественным, того, что называли живописью и так далее. И поскольку это процесс цикличный, процесс возвращения к этой саморедукции, к отказу от техники и исследования каких-то других агентностей, то есть какого-то другого нечеловеческого взгляда на мир, что на самом деле в нашу эпоху антропоцена достаточно благородно на самом деле искать какую-то реальность за пределами собственного восприятия. Вот. Это один ответ на этот вопрос, а второй достаточно простой. Фотограф никуда не исчезнет, просто потому что фотограф сегодня каждый. Каждый производит огромное количество образов, просто это перестает быть чем-то особенным, это перестает быть какой-то особенной социальной ролью. Это повседневная практика. Естественно, она претерпевает изменения, как и все абсолютно, как и все социальные практики. Вот, поэтому да, и исчезнут, скорее всего, какие-то практики фотографии, например, не знаю, рекламные, например, фотографии продукции, например, как чисто ремесленная составляющая фотографии. Останется чистое искусство и чистая работа со своим бессознательным, со своей, может быть, памятью. Вот. Так что этот процесс останется, и цифра его не уничтожила. Если фотография умерла, да здравствует фотография снова.
Yeah, I think so too in a way, and what I also noticed during the lectures, and which I find a very, very important shift, is that the discussion or the points all the three of you made were aiming at the practices and not so much at the images. It was rather like how do those images we call photographs or photography come into the world? What are the practices that are related to it? And not so much before or until quickly till today, photography is defined by the technical apparatus that is connected to it. And this is something where I enjoyed that three of you, as far as I understood it, we're pointing rather at the practices of photography that come into focus of research, and that the practices, that is also what I understood from with Timothy's the photographic. Those practices are what make the photographic image. The way of how those images are produced might be much less significant, which also made sense in Vladislav's talk, where I understood that where even though initially I was a little bit like, what, cameraless photography, the photograms of Molinot should be the same as the photographs as what is now produced by AI. I think this kind of practices are indeed, and that means as well the productive practices, as well as the perception practices, so to say, the showing, the looking at, the perceiving photographs, the discussing it, is what makes photography or an image a photograph. What makes an image a photograph? It's not really a question. It's rather like taking up the ball.
I'm going to respond. The rise of let's think about electronic music, the rise of computers, synthesized music, ability to have, virtual instrumentation. Didn't end classical music. It didn't end the production of music. It didn't end people playing a real violin or a viola or a flute. It created a kind of niche for this, in which, for all of the ubiquitous gazillions of pictures that are being made today, most of them are completely irrelevant. They're throwaways. They're usually never even looked at twice, and the role of an artist is to find a way to get into people's attention, and this is the great problem for those who have, I would call it, enfeebled visual literacy. They have very little time to reflect on images. They're not taught to reflect on images. They're not taught to look at images in a critical way. They're swiped or they're just discarded or uploaded into iClouds that are never seen again. This is a kind of failure of the education system to create a visual literacy, even for the most elemental media, television, film. There's no discourse for this particularly in the American educational system that gives people a sense of how to think about what they see, how to describe what they see. And I'll just give you one little example. I used to, in my seminars, these are for graduate students, I would show an image for a very long time on the screen. I just put an image, kind of a nondescript image, and I'd ask them to look at it very, very carefully. And after like 4 or 5 minutes, of course, everybody was fidgeting because they don't look at pictures very long. And then I handed out pieces of paper and I said, okay, I'd like you to describe this picture. Just write a description of this picture. And then, grudgingly took a piece of paper. And then I as they started, I turned it off. I turned it off. So there was no picture. And they had to describe what they had seen. And the results were just mind-boggling, sad. The inability just to describe something that they've looked at for minutes, five or more minutes, the most rudimentary descriptions you could possibly imagine, and you realize that their attention is, they don't have this kind of attentiveness that, let's say, for our generation, or let's say my generation, studied images. And you see that in what Serat said, in this constant referencing back to Peirce and others, about really sort of reading an image, or Serge Danet, people have lost this critical ability to really encounter images. And the fundamental problem for what's called the photographic arts, if I can say it like that, is to capture people's attention a second time. The glance is that's the failure of the contemporary image. Everything is just ephemeral. To capture that's the greatest problem, and has always been the greatest problem.
Serat, would you like to add something to it?
I think the point that Mr. Drakri made about the photograph as information or knowledge, that really makes a lot of sense to me, because and the idea of copies also, sort of, and what is original, and the idea of reality is very important, and how we engage with it. So yeah, that's not much more.
No, I'm actually this whole question is at the very core of much of what I'm currently thinking about. Or one of the things that interests me is, and I'm frequently lecturing on the question of how actually we recognize an image as a photograph. What actually is, when we look at an image, what makes it a photograph? And it is a surprisingly difficult question to answer, because either we get into conflict with the production of the image, and then we come into technologies which don't have anything to do with what we are used to call photographic, like a camera or light or a light sensitive surface or something like that. Or we come into the conflict that we perceive images not as photographs, which are actually produced photographically with those technologies, with light sensitive surfaces and so on. And so this also, for me, corresponds with the idea of the photographic, that photography is a mode of perception and not of production of images, and which I found with all the three images, with all the images you showed in the three lectures, from the video to the many artistic positions. They all, one way or the other, play with this notion of how difficult it actually is to recognize an image, or how easy on one hand, on the other hand, how disturbing it can be to recognize an image as a photograph, which I find fascinating.
I always think, the perception of an image is something that has to be undone in your mind. They are assimilated instantaneously. So you capture an image, unlike a text, and then you have to ask many questions, and one of the questions I always ask is, in whose interest am I seeing this? Like, where did this come from? Where is it? What? How did this get into wherever, on the front page of a newspaper or in a magazine or on the screen? And then to ask, how did that happen? And then the analytical part, maybe I've just been doing it a long time, but when, for example, I saw that Sony award, the picture that was in the Sony award, the minute that I saw it, I saw something wrong with it. There was something wrong. Perceptually, something wrong with it. Not because it was because I look at a lot of pictures. I don't know, but I saw something that just struck me as a little bit inconsistent in terms of the way that the subject was organized inside of the picture. And then as I looked at it more, then you start to see many discrepancies in this picture. Definitely. And that's why I said, to fool a jury, whoever the jury was, to fool a jury of, I assume, photo experts or artists who judged this contest is the most shocking part. Is the most shocking part of it. Because just intuitively, from a lifetime of looking at pictures, you kind of get a sense that you have to sort of like pause and then try to sort of undo the effect, the cognitive effect of the image, not because it's a perceptual thing, but because for me, it's a little different from what you said, which was, for me, we have a photographic cognition, we have a kind of cognitive photography in our head somehow, and we don't know our way past it. It's why always abstract images interfere with our sense of what the world should look like, right? I mean, this is the struggle of abstract art in the 20th century, right? It was unfamiliar, therefore simplistic or childish or irrelevant or whatever, because the this photographic business, it's so embedded in AI that I think it really needs really deep thinking to come to terms with it.
Vladislav has raised his hand.
Да, я просто хотел добавить к этому обсуждению то обстоятельство, что наше понимание фотографического во многом обусловлено, как я уже говорил, предшествующими практиками. Если мы возьмем того же самого Фонткуберта, про которого я говорил, по сути, эти изображения вполне могли бы существовать на выставки, ну, цифрового искусства, допустим, цифровой живописи, но они позиционировались как фотографии. То есть это вопрос позиционирования. Более того, они даже были напечатаны как фотографии. То есть это были желатин-серебряные отпечатки, которые, ну, они воспроизводили технологию, они подстраивались под наши существующие конвенции, представление о фотографии. При этом с какой-то, скажем, с простой, с обывательской точки зрения, конечно, это фотографиями не является, потому что это несуществующие места, их никогда никто не снимал. Вот, так что это они являются фотографиями исключительно, то есть они становятся фотографиями в процессе позиционирования их как фотография. Это парадоксально и как будто немножко как бы дурацкий даже ответ, но это работает. Это работает.
I enjoy the privilege of discussing with the three of you, but I was wondering whether maybe other people would like to join the discussion, which I would really appreciate. And let me go through my notes.
There is a question in the room.
Okay.
Come to the microphone, yeah. Это прямо вот.
У меня вопрос когда мы говорим о фотографии как о забвении, как вы говорите, я правильно понимаю, что то изображение, которое как бы не существует, генерирует нейросеть, правильно? Да. И когда мы говорим о том, что это не landscapes, а datascapes, мы говорим о том, что у нас уже есть набор каких-то определенных фотографий, которые, преобразуясь, дают нам новую, правильно? То есть он все равно в любом случае в производстве новых фотографий использовал какую-то еще. И мне кажется, что здесь вопрос не о том, что не вопрос о позиционировании, а вопрос как раз-таки обратно о производстве. То есть когда мы делаем эту фотографию, которая как бы по существу не существует, мы все равно берем датасет, который использует уже существующие изображения, уже существующие образы. И мне кажется, эта фотография не только потому, что она позиционируется как фотография, но здесь еще вопрос ее производства. Как бы мы ни хотели уйти от фотографии как этого воспоминания, мы все равно к нему возвращаемся, потому что в процессе ее производства была использована другая фотографий или набор фотографий. И мне кажется, что здесь мы говорим не о забвении как таковом, а какой-то коллективной памяти, которая деконструируется и дает нам то воспоминание, которого как бы не было, но которое было и которое деформировалось. И поэтому мне кажется, что это фотография, потому что она в процессе производства была фотографией. Конечно, она не реальна, но она была таким воспоминанием. Поэтому мне кажется, здесь речь идет не о забвении, не об отсутствии фотографии, а ее просто такой своеобразной конструкции. Что я права, не права, не знаю, просто интересно было у вас узнать.
Ну вот, если мы, то есть в той...
Can I make a short comment?
Yeah. It seems that I'm not sure. Have you started already answering or reacting?
Ну, да, я хотел
Vladislav. First Vladislav, then Timothy, please.
Ответить, да. Значит, тут есть две ситуации. Одна это ситуация, в которой программу обучают на изображениях. То есть у нее есть определенный набор фотографических изображений, по которым воспроизводится действительность. Как я говорил, таким образом вот этот datascape — это получается отпечаток опыта машины, опыта ее непосредственной, скажем так, памяти, ну, то есть, в общем-то, машинной памяти. Проблема в том, что воспроизводится таким образом изображение хоть оно и создано из того, что имеет непосредственное индексальное отношение к действительности, происходит утрата этой индексальности за счет того, что объектом переработки становится уже абсолютно другой объект, которого нет в этом датасете. То есть это скорее таким образом воспоминания машины, да, вот эти вот картинки, которые есть у нее в ее памяти, становятся способом эту картину описать, ее как-то переконструировать ее на своем языке. Тогда мы уже говорим не столько о воспоминании, сколько о самом процессе языка. То есть это одна ситуация. Вторая ситуация, которая, мне кажется, гораздо более вероятна, что машина обучается не на изображениях, она обучается, то есть в нее не загружались фотографии, просто каждая отдельная точка карты переводится сразу в 3D-модель. То есть в нее загружены алгоритмы создания таких 3D-поверхностей. С ними можно взаимодействовать. Я пытался это сделать, я загружал туда изображение, и он генерирует не двумерное изображение, а трехмерную модель, с которой ты взаимодействуешь, как тебе захочется. Вот. И, соответственно, каждая двухмерная точка изображения превращается в трехмерную. Вот. То есть это не совсем процесс использования изображения, это процесс использования данных. Вот. То есть это не визуальное мышление, это не наша визуальная память, это все еще больше похоже на наш именно язык, это все еще больше похоже на речь, вот, чем на визуальные какие-то воспоминания. То есть, почему это забвение? Потому что это забвение, потому что это не процесс вспоминания чего-то конкретного, существующего. Ну, я бы так ответил.
Спасибо.
Timothy?
Friedrich, we have another question from the room.
Yeah, but Timothy wanted to react to the previous question.
Okay.
У меня тоже ряд.
Let's start, Timothy.
Sorry. Sorry about that. I want to say something very quickly about the Fontcuberta landscapes. I remember, I know him, and I remember when that book was first published, and from my memory, those images were not created using AI. The software Terragen then, this was some time ago, was generally used for geological surveys to create dimensional maps of the planet, and all of the input of the terrestrial or satellite images that were taken was uploaded so that one could do terrain mapping and one could do dimensional mapping and whatever, etc. So the parameters of that software was such that it was really completely produced by the use of filters within the software itself, not by artificial intelligence. So I just think it's important that we understand that what Fontcuberta did was not AI, and there was no sophisticated AI in that when that book was produced that could have produced those images. These were produced by applying filters that allowed you to add water or clouds or kinds of clouds or cumulus clouds or ocean, the color, all of that stuff. So I think that's kind of interesting to sort of bear in mind, that the calculable image of the learning, the language learning models that are used by contemporary AI, because of course they're not looking at images, right? They can't see images. They're reading streams of data, is a serious thing to have to consider, I mean, and of course, it's going to produce dimensional, it will assume that we want to see dimensional images as opposed to flat 2D ones, right? But that's not entirely true. I mean, in the graphic arts field where AI is really booming right now, in the advertising business, the graphic design field is almost at the point of a crisis, because these graphic designers will be unemployed because advertisements. There was a special issue of Cosmopolitan magazine a couple of years ago in which they produced an image using, I think it was DALL-E, one of the image softwares, and on the cover it had a picture of a very sexy astronaut on a crazy planet. And at the bottom, it had a capture. It said, "This picture was made in 10 seconds." It just generated this image for them. And then you realize how many people are going to be unemployed, in these industries. So, I think it's important to keep clear, like there is a distinction, what Fontcuberta was exploring in terms of its relationship with the historical paintings, the Hokusai paintings, the Friedrich paintings, and the photographs that he used, the Stieglitz pictures and stuff like this, was his specific reading of the history of image making, in which there's another, I'll say it with quotation marks, hallucination. There's a way out. There's a way out of those iconic images.
There is another question at the European University, I heard.
Мне кажется, вот проблема интерпретации, что если мы сгенерировали из фотографии через искусственный интеллект и... В общем, проблема вот предыдущей интерпретации, что из сгенерированной фотографии мы тоже получаем фотографию, мне кажется, может быть, еще в том, что то же самое изображение вот в вашей презентации такого же, не знаю, типа, жанра получали и из картин. То есть мы можем тогда назвать это и не только фотографией, но и картиной. Я уверен, что сейчас можно то же самое сгенерировать еще из слов. То есть получается, это уже тогда мы называем конечный продукт словами. Тоже проблема тогда получается в интерпретации конечного продукта. Короче.
Простите, это живопись, которая была генерирована через живопись, ее называют генеративной живописью, поэтому...
Да, так.
Ну да.
Вы можете сказать, что все называют фотографией, короче, все, конечно.
Okay, wait a second.
Вопрос.
Could you please, in the room, the interpreter is not able to hear you, and so you have to speak up in order to make the translation audible to all of her. Yeah, in order for her to translate.
Что?
Повторить ваш комментарий нужно, чтобы вас перевела.
Sorry. Просто мой предыдущий оратор сказал, что тогда те изображения, которые генерируются искусственным интеллектом посредством деформации или преобразования живописи, тоже называют фотографией, но нет, их тоже называют генеративной живописью. То есть здесь как бы опять вот это вот разделение, когда фотографию через искусственный интеллект пропускают сгенерированная фотография, когда это живопись, это генерированная живопись. Но был очень интересный комментарий по поводу слов, что когда мы просим нейросеть словами, мы описываем ей какое-то изображение, она его делает, то должны ли мы называть продукт сгенерированными словами? Да, здесь, конечно, есть эта проблема, но вот именно вот поинт про живопись, мне кажется, здесь уместен. Вот. Спасибо.
No answer.
So we're if my informations are correct, I would like to continue the conversation on the one hand, but on the other hand, I understand that the European University people need to close shop soon, so to say. And I would suggest that we will have ample time to continue the discussion tomorrow, which I suggest we will do if there is not a riot that says, no, we have to continue discussing. What we could try is, if you would like to continue in a rather informal way, is that we create a breakout room. I don't know, it will be depending on someone at the European University, but formally or officially, I would like to close this day of the conference. And I would like to thank everybody from first and foremost the three speakers of this afternoon or morning for Timothy. And I would like to thank very, very heartful with all my heart my colleagues in St. Petersburg, which unfortunately I couldn't join this year again. And I can't tell you how much I miss being in St. Petersburg. We will
go on.
Go ahead. We will see each other tomorrow at maybe that is I always forget 11. The times at 11 Moscow time, which translated into a lot of different time zones all over the globe, which I will not now
UTC +3.
Yes, UTC +3. So I'll hand over to Maria to say what's going on. Next.
I was just going to say if someone to follow up with your idea of the breakout rooms, so maybe we have a 5-minute break so that I consult the tech people who are in charge of the Zoom right now, and Olga and I cannot make the breakout rooms. But if we have a 5-minute break, we'll try to find out a way to do it, and then whoever is left and whoever wants to stay for a while and chat with each other in a more informal way without it being recorded and streamed onto the YouTube, we'll continue then. What Lovely. Do you say about that?
That sounds perfect. I will stay.
Okay. 5-minute break, and I come back, and we try to devise the breakout.
And those of you who have to leave now, I hope we're going to see you tomorrow at the second part of the conference.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Большое спасибо, дорогие коллеги. До свидания. До завтра. Завтра мы встречаемся в 11 часов по Москве. Если кто-то хочет еще остаться сегодня, поболтать с Фридрихом о фотографии, у нас будут отдельные, мы пытаемся смоделировать ситуацию, как будто бы мы здесь на конференции, и вы отошли с чашечкой кофе, у нас будут, мы надеемся, что мы сейчас сделаем сессионные залы, в которые можно будет зайти и чуть-чуть еще поговорить в неформальном режиме, без записи, без перевода, без трансляции, просто по-человечески, как почти живые человеки. Спасибо. 5 минут перерыв.